A vector is a sequence container that supports random access to its elements. You can think of it as a very powerful object-oriented array. Vectors are extremely flexible. Let's take a look. Take a working copy of vector.cpp there in our chapter 12 folder of the exercise files, and I'll paste it into our working project and open it here in the editor. Now let's start by just compiling and running so that we can walk through it. This actually does quite a bit. So the first thing you'll notice is on line 3, we're including the vector header. And then on line 9, we're declaring a vector and initializing it from an initializer list. This is actually a C++ 11 feature. It is not available in earlier versions of C++. In earlier versions of C++, you'll need to initialize the vector in a different way, and later on in this file, I'll show you how to initialize a vector from a C array. C++ actually gives containers a couple of new features that are remarkably convenient. This is one of them, the ability to use an initializer list like you can with a C array. And another one is the range-based iterator, the range-based for loop. So we'll take a look at that in a little bit here. So there on line 9, we declare and initialize our vector. You'll notice that the vector needs a template parameter for the type of the elements that are in the vector. This is a vector of integers, and we're calling it vi1, and it has 10 integer elements numbered 1 through 10. You can see we can take the size of the vector on line 10, and then down here in our results it says size is 10. You can take the element from the front and the element from the back, and there we have the element at the front is 1 and the element at the back is 10. And we can insert an object right in the middle of the vector. And so there we are inserting the number 42 at begin plus 5. So vi1.begin, this returns an iterator that points to the beginning of the vector. And so we're just adding 5 to that, and that iterator knows what to do with the plus sign. And so we're adding 5 to that, and we're inserting number 42 at the position begin plus 5. And then when we look at the size again, we see our size is now 11. That's down here. And we can look at element number 5. It's vi1 sub 5, which is actually the 6th element because the first element is sub 0. And we can see that that is number 42. Then we can erase that element with the vi1.erase. And again, we take that iterator begin plus 5. We see our size is 10, and now our element at vi sub 5 is 6. Continuing on, we can add an element at the end with push back. So we push back and we give it the number 47. Our size is now 11, and our back element is now 47. We can use the range-based iterator, or the range-based for loop as it's sometimes called. Again, this is a C++ 11 feature. So it's simply for and a variable reference of the type that is the base type of the vector, and a colon and the container name. And that'll step through the container, and for each element of the container, it will populate that variable with the element from that element of the container. And so it's as simple as that, and you can see that we're printing out each of our numbers in the vector, and we even have that 47 at the end of it. If you're not using C++ 11, you can populate a vector from a C array. And so here I declare a C array with 10 elements numbered 1 through 10, and then I declare the vector like this. So constructing the vector in this manner on line 38, I have the vector, I have the type parameter, int, this one's called vi2, and then in parentheses I have the constructor arguments. The first argument is a pointer to the array, and the second argument is a pointer to the array plus the size of the array. And of course, those constructor arguments can be iterators. They don't have to be pointers. An iterator can usually be used just like a pointer. And then I can also, of course, iterate through the vector with a plain old for loop. Again, if you're not using C++ 11, and you can see that our elements are printed out here with the I value and then a colon and the value of that element of the array. Of course, you can have a vector of any type, and here's a vector of class string type. And string, of course, is another STL class. And here we're initializing this one with the arguments from our argument list. So if you've set up your Eclipse like I have with our argument list, and I'm just going to show you this real quick. I'm going to right-click on our project and come down here to Properties. Under Run Debug Settings, under our Working Project, and Edit, and here under Arguments, you see I have arguments 1, 2, 3. So we'll cancel, and you see our first argument, of course, the first element of argv is always the full path to the executable. So this will be different on your system, obviously. And then the second, third, and fourth arguments are the first, second, and third arguments that I had in that list, 1, 2, and 3. And so this initializes it from a regular C array, just like we saw before. And then I'm using the range-based for loop to print out each of these arguments. So vectors are a fundamental container type that's very powerful and very easy to use. It's actually the basis of a number of other types of containers in the STL, including strings. So use a vector wherever you would otherwise use a C array, but could benefit from some of the capabilities that a vector provides. Now let's delete our working file, and we'll run clean to get ready for our next lesson.